In the world of Turinlay rests an enormous island called Pricene. The nation of Pricene is governed by a king and council, though the real power rests in the hands of 10 cursed immortals, powerful supernatural figures who serve only their self-interests. The land is plagued with black-blooded monsters, corrupt political leaders, and bloodthirsty bandits. And the one man who is willing to stand up to them all just so happens to be an unholy abomination, a summoner of the undead, the necromancer of Pricene. Coming September 1st, 2025 to a podcatcher near you. For more information, please visit creativetypo.com.
This episode may contain content that is not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised, especially for those under the age of 13. Welcome to Into the Night. I'm Nari, your guide on today's excursion down a twisted path. Be careful not to get lost. Be it dark or light, it's easy to lose your way. Are you ready? Then let's begin. The Abandons, Part 4. We grew stronger in a lot of ways in the weeks to come. Each payday, we stuffed our wages into pouches, continuing to work for the day we could free the girls from the hellish orphanage where they were trapped. Melva passed messages between us and the girls. She made a point of filling us in on all the happenings at High Lake, and Tom about burst when Melva told him that Shani had asked about him. She even slipped Melva a piece of needlework she had made just for Tom, and he tucked that into his pocket as if it were a $100 gold piece. We grinned, and he blushed, but we were all pleased for the two of them. Lord knows happiness was a welcome thought in our world. Knowing that the girls, whether they were sisters or sweethearts, missed us and needed us to rescue them as quickly as possible, it ignited a renewed drive in each of us each time we heard from Miss Melva. It also became clear to us that while they seemed like two very different people, there was a close-knit bond between Grattan Grebby and his younger sister. Whenever Melva called on the ranch, we saw a lightness of spirit in him that reminded us that he was no more than 30. Most of the time, it was easy to mistake him for a much older man. It wasn't until years later that I understood why both Grattan and Melva had a soft spot in their hearts for boys and girls who faced unimaginable tragedy. Months passed, and we fell into a routine of tending the livestock and doing repairs around the ranch. Fences needed mending, and it seemed there was a never-ending number of tasks to complete, even on days that didn't involve wrangling angry cows. Finally, at Christmas time, after we rounded up the last of the stragglers we could reach before the winter storms buried the valleys, we were told there'd be a special gathering at the ranch house. We, at first, assumed that Elroy Willingham, the owner of the ranch, had decided to pay the place a call. Daily operations were under the supervision of Mr. Grebby, but the land and the cattle were owned by a man we knew in name only. What we had been able to piece together was that he was elderly and lived back east after the rigors of ranch life no longer made living in the West a comfortable option for him. He trusted Grattan Grebby implicitly, and we were to follow our foreman's orders without fail. None of us would have considered doing anything else. Grattan Grebby was the boss, but he was also the father figure and older brother we all needed. We could tell by the way Melva talked that she filled the mother-sister role for the girls, too. We all considered ourselves blessed. As Christmas approached, we shined our boots and made ourselves as presentable as possible to meet Mr. Willingham. We didn't want to make a bad impression on him. He could, after all, send us away if he thought Mr. Grebby had made a mistake by bringing us on. We'd come this far, and we didn't want to ruin a good thing. We'd pooled our money together, and we were halfway to being able to pay the adoption fees for all the girls. Even the boys who didn't have a sister or a sweetheart put their money into the till. It had become our mission to rescue all the girls. We felt terrible for the younger boys who would remain at High Lake, but we had to rescue the girls no matter what. The boys might be adopted out as lowly field workers, but the girls faced a far greater threat, like the one we watched poor Hilda handed over to. Some children had been sent off to farmers for a price suitable to many Stoltzmen, and Melva did her part to protect the girls as best she could. Now we had to do our part to get them out of there. Some of us had never experienced a real family Christmas before, and none of us were quite sure what to expect. When we stepped into the ranch house on Christmas Eve, we gasped. We'd never seen a place turned so pretty in our lives. Melva busied herself with the last of the desserts that she placed on a long wooden table. The smell of wild turkey and grouse roasting wafted from the kitchen, making our mouths water. "Here, boys, grab some of these cookies. It'll be just a little bit longer before dinner's ready. I can tell you're ready to eat now." Melva smiled at us, her normally quiet personality a little more enlivened for the holiday. "Miss Melva, I could probably gnaw on the meanest coyote out there right now. That food smells better than I've ever smelled before." She chuckled. "Well, no need to track down some poor critter out in the wild tonight, Oren. We have a real feast planned for you boys." Her brother strode into the room, but he looked haggard. We'd noticed a change in him for the past week or so, and it had us concerned. We hoped this meal wasn't our last at Brighton, but it was hard to discern what worried the man. Looking out at our faces, he must have sensed our apprehension. "Boys, gather round. There's something I need to talk to you about." Our appetites disappeared, and I was tempted to spit out the bite of cookie I held in my mouth. Where a moment before it tasted divine, suddenly it crumbled into sand in my mouth. We moved closer to where Grat and Grebby stood. "I've tried to hide it for the past week, but there's something that's weighed heavily on me." No one breathed. I worked hard to control my stomach. "Elroy Willingham isn't the only owner of this ranch, but he's the finest man I've ever known. I've spent my life trying to make him proud, and I hope I've done right by him and this ranch." I stole a glance at Melva, and she dabbed her eyes with a kerchief while taking in a shuddering breath. I was frozen with fear because clearly bad news was about to be told, and I wasn't sure how our world would be changed because of it. I owe everything I am and everything my sister is to that man. That is why this is so hard to talk about. But you boys understand grief better than most, and I knew you'd understand. The man who I considered my pa died a week and a half ago. A collective gasp went around the room, and I saw the fear in all our faces. What did this mean for us? We felt terrible for Mr. Willingham and the Grebbys, but had our stable life just been ripped away once more? "Because of what he did for us," he said, glancing at his sister, "I aim to do the same for you boys. He took us in when he didn't have to. I want you to know that you will always have a home with us." In the silence that followed, Tom found his voice. "We can't thank you enough for that, Mr. Grebby." Agreeing voices rang out. "I have to ask, though, what does this mean for the ranch? Is Brighton getting sold?" He said out loud the ugly question we all wanted answered. Grattan raised his eyebrows and Melva gasped. I saw Tom shrink. "Oh, boys, is that what you think?" Melva stared at us. Our faces couldn't hide the guilt and apprehension that had taken hold of us. "Tell them, Grattan. They need to know." "The ranch isn't for sale. Elroy Willingham left it to Melva and me. We can do with it what we want." He paused. "And that is why we wanted you here tonight." We hadn't noticed Melva step toward the door that led to the hallway. Then we heard footsteps and turned our attention to the sound. "Rizzy!" I screamed. We raced towards the girls and threw our arms around them. "How long can they stay? Will they be in trouble with the Stoltzmans for being here?" The girls smiled as tears fell down their cheeks. "They aren't leaving. They're here to stay." "But we've only raised half the money. How?" "I inherited more than the ranch. Melva and I are the only heirs to Mr. Willingham. We paid for all of them to be here with us. You boys keep your hard-earned money and consider this our gift to you. They have a home here, and so do you boys, for as long as you want to be here. The girls will stay in the ranch house while you boys..." His voice trailed off. He cleared his throat. "While you boys need to set up more beds in the bunkhouse for them." He pointed to the hallway where the younger boys from the orphanage stood. They ran to greet us once we realized they were there. We scooped them into our arms and whooped and hollered. "Once the weather is nicer in the spring, we'll build some more living spaces here at the ranch. No more orphanages for any of you. This is home." That was the first of many happy years spent with our loved ones at the Brighton. Not every day was happy, of course. We faced our share of sorrows, too. Doak McFadden fell off his horse in a stampede and died at the age of 14. We took it hard, and we did what we could to comfort his younger brother, Clyde. In the years that followed, children were born, illnesses struck, and injuries happened. We never felt alone, though. We were more than a community of friends. We were family. Ike rescued me from drowning one rainy spring day when the snow melt rushed down from the mountains. Tom and I fought off bandits who ambushed Grattan. We thought we'd lost him, and we would have had it not been for the care of Melva's husband, the town doctor, who moved to the area 2.5 years after we all left the orphanage. Dr. Milton Treat loved Melva, and it was an honor to witness the angel who watched over our sisters have such a wonderful life with a good man. To no one's surprise, Tom and Shani married once she turned 16. They raised a passel of fine children and were devoted to each other their entire lives. Rizzy and Ike, to my surprise, fell madly in love as teenagers and married in a ceremony held in the front yard of the ranch house. The two, besides being wonderful stewards of the Brighton, also spent their lives bettering the community through their works. When the orphanage was abandoned after the untimely deaths of the Stoltzmans at the hands of thieves, Ike renovated the building into a school.
"I don't wish ill on anyone, but those Stoltzmans got what they deserved."
Rizzy couldn't hide the anger in her eyes.
"Serves them right to be robbed and murdered by thieves after all they took from others."
Ike and I didn't disagree with her. The building was put to good use, and Ruby Lipscomb became a fine teacher for the children of the town of High Lake and surrounding ranches. As for me, Orrin Hamby, I met the prettiest girl I'd ever seen, the daughter of a neighboring ranch when I was 19. Maddie Stillwell and I wed nearly 50 years ago, and I haven't regretted it even for an instant. For a ragtag bunch of abandons who no one had much hope for, we turned out to be good people who lived good lives. The helping hand and generosity Elroy Willingham showed Grattan and Melba when they were children was held out to us. In turn, we spent our lives trying to help others, especially those who needed that extra nudge in life. We've done our best to honor our friends like Lester Peake and Doak McFadden, who didn't have a chance to grow up and do the same. The world, especially in the West, could be unforgiving, and they paid the price of being in the wrong spot at the wrong time. We will never forget the ones like Hiram and Hilda Botts either, who never had a chance at all. Sold to evil and heartless men, it pains me to think how many children suffered the same fate. I'm too old to believe that places like the orphanage in High Lake weren't found in lots of places. Grattan Greby, my lifelong mentor and friend, never married. He said we were all the family he needed, and he treated our children and grandchildren like his own. A finer man I've never known. We buried him on the hill overlooking the ranch house, and there's a certain comfort that comes from knowing he still watches over us. He continues to remind us that we will never be abandoned again.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Into the Night Anthology podcast. Written by Caroline Giammanco, narrated by Nari. Theme music by Nico Rodriguez. All other original music, sound design, and editing by Omen Hawk Studios. You can find our links in the show notes. Into the Night is on your favorite podcatcher, so make sure to like, subscribe, and leave a 5-star review to help other excursionists to join us. I'll see you next time. And remember, whether in the shadows or in the daylight, all twisted paths lead you into the night. Into the Night Anthology is a Creative Typo Entertainment production.